Hello, everyone. Welcome to Developing Palates. I'm Aaron Loomis, coming to you from the Ventura Cigar Company studio. With me today is John McTavish. How you doing, John?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to do reviews.
That's right. So today we are talking about the CLE Habano 70x4. I don't know what you call this vitola, but it's 4 inches by 70 ring gauge. It is made at the El Aladino factory in Honduras. Wrappers Honduran Habano. Binders from Honduras. Filler is a mix of Honduras, Nicaragua, and Peru. Blended by Christian Aroa. Price point is $8.92, and the cigar was released in July of 2018. So with all that out of the way, John. You
I
guys are so close, man. So close. Take us through your smoking experience.
actually think the name of this should be called the Grand CLE. The
Okay.
Grand CLE.
All right.
Christian, you can have that for free, no cost. That's just float me some Grand CLEs, brother. So actually, this started out really interesting. Weirdly enough, I like the format. I know it's probably seems a little monstrous for some people, but I like the fact that it's a short cigar. It's a big ring gauge, but it's a short cigar. I don't mind a big ring gauge cigar if it's short. And I think the natural comparison here is going to be the nubs, and it's not a nub. It's
Right.
different than a nub, and it's different in a good way. The cigar was started out really interesting, had a lot of complexity. Typically what I would expect from a CLE: some honey, sweetness, cocoa, baking spices. Quite palatable, quite pleasant, not overpowering. Really nice creaminess, really nice baking spices. I did find the middle third and last third, the complexity kind of dropped off, which was fine because the thing that I took away from the smoking experience is I had a lot of fun. And even though I rated the cigar experience overall as average, I would smoke these again. I would buy these. I enjoyed them. It was fun. It was a shortish smoking experience. It was tasty. Nothing of the flavor profiles when it was average was unpleasant. Construction was good. Draw was great. So it's weird because in my mind, the score doesn't really match the sort of emotion attached to the review, but I feel like it's a fair representation of the flavors that I got out of the cigar. What was your experience like?
Yeah, for me, it started with cedar and intense baking spice and light cream. A little further in, the baking spice mellowed a little bit. Retrohale is primarily creamy cedar with a little bit of baking spice in the background. The first third smoked pretty quickly,
Yeah.
and the baking spice had picked back up. Took the lead out of the creamy cedar. Strength was kind of at medium. In the second third, creamy cedar and baking spice became even, but the baking spice had a really long finish to it. A little further in, some char joins, the joins of cedar. Then further in, the cream and the baking spice became fairly faint. Retrohale still got that creamy cedar going on. As the second third's wrapping up, creaminess increases a little bit, goes along with that slightly charred cedar and the light baking spice. Strength bumped up to slightly above medium. And then getting to the final third, the char picked up a bit. A little further in, the baking spice drops out. Retrohale's got a slightly charred cedar to it. And then as the cigar wraps up, kind of finishes out with that charred cedar and slight creaminess to it. And slightly above medium, and the strength level kind of stayed there. For construction wise, burn line was a little bit wavy throughout. I did have to do a touch up around the burn line just to. It seemed like it was tunneling a little bit, and I wanted to keep everything on track, so I just did a kind of a touch up around the outside ring, and get everything back in sync. I knocked the ash off at the halfway point. I just didn't want to have a disaster on my hands.
But it was holding on pretty well.
It was holding on.
Yeah.
I think you could like a nub. I think you could smoke this and have it go the whole way
I think
and
so
not
too.
have to drop it at all. But
Yeah.
with the 70 ring gauge, you got a nice chunk hanging out there. I just don't want to. I just didn't need to
Pretty
have
dangerous.
that. Exactly. In regards to the draw, it was a little bit looser than I prefer. And my issue with large ring gauge cigars is when you get a loose draw, it's just amplified based on how your mouth position is.
Right.
And it's a weird kind of thing. Like you just feel like I'm having to work to do this, and I don't want to overheat things, but I also don't want to like choke down on like a gallon of smoke at a time. So it's just kind of this weird little balance that you have to go. All right. So overall thoughts on this one, John?
It was fun, man. It's a fun. I'll admit that when I originally heard they were doing a big ring gauge cigar, I was like, oh my gosh, man, not another big ring gauge cigar. But when we got the samples, I was like, you know what, these kind of look fun. And so far, I think this is the second one we've done, and I've had an enjoyable experience with both. So I would say I'm kind of looking forward to working my way through the batch. And honestly, if they're available as a sampler, I would probably pick them up because, like if I just feel like a good 40 whatever minute smoke, I'd probably smoke one of these, and that would be my go-to. So, like I said, even though I rated it as average, I still had fun.
Yep. Yeah, I thought the cigar provided a good flavor profile through the first two thirds. Dropped down a little bit in the final third. CLE does Habano pretty well, and this is
Yeah.
no exception to that. Vitola size is not really my cup of tea. I don't. The mouthfeel is just weird to me. It takes a little bit for me to get used to kind of smoking this. And in a shorter Vitola like this, it kind of I don't reach that sweet spot of where I'm like feeling like I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Kind of going on. If you like the larger ring gauge cigars, then this is definitely worth a try. I mean, it's got good flavor to it. I wouldn't say that this is like a step down from the smaller ring gauge Vitolas of this cigar. I think it carries the line correctly, just in a larger format. But the first third burn through pretty fast, but after that, man, it slowed way down for me. Like it was not a short experience. Like I got a Robusto extra-ish smoking time frame out of this cigar. So, based on my experience, I would say don't expect it to be a fast smoke. But I guess it could differ based on maybe it was because I had a little bit of a looser draw. It was just a little bit more airy and it wasn't burning as quickly. I don't know, but I think it's well worth a try. So getting into the scores, start at the top with me at 6.32. John was next at 6 even. So based on my score, it's spot on. I mean, it's definitely a good flavor profile. Construction was a little bit lower just because of that touch up of the tunneling and the looser draw. I mean, we'd be looking at a higher sixes if we were doing perfect construction here for me. But how was the 6 even for you?
Yeah, I was really hoping it was landing in the sixes because I feel like if you asked me what the experience was blind, I would have said this is in the low sixes. And I think your comment there about this being a good representation of the line is very true because sometimes you can get a size within a line and it's like, oh man, that doesn't smoke like anything else. This to me says I want to try the smaller size, like the thinner sizes, and I want to try the bigger sizes in this line. So that is in a good way a good representation of that Habano line, and I want to try the Corojo, and I want to work on the Maduro, and I want to do all the line that's available. So yeah.
I think this is kind of a smart move by Christian because he's doing a lot of these large ring gauges for Tom Lazuka for Asylum. And those are usually lower price point cigars. But if you've already got that kind of customer in the fold, and you want to take them down some different directions, this might be your way in. And then I know it sounds weird, but once you get the large ring gauge smokers in, maybe they start, following the portfolio on the CLE side and start coming down in size. I don't know how that progresses, but I think it's an interesting thing to maybe check out or see.
Definitely.
All right. Any other final thoughts from you on this one?
I think that people may be surprised because I am not typically a large ring gauge smoker, and I think a lot of people they'll be surprised just how many large ring gauge smokers there are. The collective we in Canada sell quite a few large ring gauge cigars. You wouldn't think that would be the case in Canada, but I can tell you that some of the local retailers who brought in the large ring gauge stuff, specifically from CLA and Tom Lazuka, they had no problem selling it. Like it sold itself. So nice. Yeah, the market is there.
All right. If you're just catching this video on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to us. But also check out the full written review on the website, developingpalates.com. Follow us on the social media channels, and you can catch all of our review recaps on podcasts, so iTunes, Google Play, and Podbean. Thank you for tuning in. We will catch you on the next one.